campaign?
Warcraft edition. Yeah. We have been waiting a year to get back to the BlizzCon stage to talk to you all about the next WoW expansion, Legion. And finally, that day has come. We are super excited to take you through the lands of the Broken Isles and show you all that they have to offer. Sorry, a little technical difficulty. So over the course of the next hour and a half, we're going to tell you everything there is to know about Legion. And that, by the way, is the extent of my Photoshop skills. So here's what's on the agenda. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the expansion. Eric Maloof is going to take you on a deep dive of the Demon Hunter Start experience. Julian Morris and Gary Plattner are going to take you through the zones of the Broken Isles. And the mighty, as you can see, Ian Hazzikostas is going to talk to you about dungeons and raids. But that's not all. We've got all new features to talk about today. Features that have not yet been revealed to the public and somehow, miraculously, not data mined or spoiled by MMO Champion. So, yeah. So, who's ready to hear about the third Burning Legion invasion of Azeroth? Woo! All right, let's get started. So where we last left off, Gul'dan had taken control of the Iron Horde from Grommash Hellscream and was raising a Fel-infused army to invade Azeroth and burn it to the ground. Now, of course, being the righteous defenders of justice that we are, we stopped that from happening. Or so we thought. The Burning Legion wasn't about to let their pawn fail. Not again. So while Draenor was saved, and it was saved, Gul'dan would be sent to our world, where he would be allowed to fulfill his pact. What happened to Gul'dan on Azeroth? Well, on our world, Gul'dan would hear a familiar voice. A voice that had been directing him all through Draenor, Kil'jaeden. And Kil'jaeden would gift Gul'dan with the near limitless knowledge of the Burning Legion. And with the secrets of the universe in his grasp, Gul'dan would be commanded to the Broken Isles, to the Tomb of Sargeras, where he would shatter protective wards, sealing an ancient gateway to Legion worlds. Needless to say, Gul'dan succeeds and kicks off the largest Burning Legion invasion of Azeroth ever. Chris Metzen, what are you doing in my slide? I can't shake him. He's everywhere. So, that leads us to the cinematic that you guys just saw during the opening ceremony. Maybe. Yes? All right. Yes. Yes, it does. How about that cinematic, guys? We got any Alliance in the house? Yeah! You know, I've seen that cinematic probably 100 times. And we just showed it again, and I got goosebumps for the 101st time. Yeah. It's amazing, and maybe it's, and I think about it, and I think maybe it's because I know the story of Legion, I know what's going to happen, and it excites me. Or maybe it's because I'm excited for you all to get into Legion and find out the story for yourselves. But it strikes me that after working on Warcraft and WoW for almost 12 years now, that the game, the story, the world, the characters can still have such a huge effect on me. And hopefully on you too. But I do want to tell you something about this cinematic that you probably don't know. It is the first time that we have created a cinematic that ties directly into the main story of the game. It's a direct handoff, in fact. You know, with Legion, we felt like we really had an opportunity to take our storytelling to another level. And our incredibly talented cinematics team agreed and was eager to oblige. Now, clearly, guys, clearly, we wanted to get you all super excited for the expansion. By the way, how did we do? Okay, I think we can check that one off the list. But we also wanted to highlight our greatest heroes in their darkest hour and paint a target on the most dominant threat in the universe, the Burning Legion. And in the middle of all of that, kick off what we consider to be a really great Warcraft story. So, how does a cinematic handoff into the game actually work? Well, that takes us to the Broken Shore. What is the Broken Shore? That is a great question that somebody out there is thinking. I'm going to tell you what the Broken Shore is. Most importantly, the Broken Shore is ground zero for the Burning Legion invasion of Azeroth. The Legion invasion is coming directly from the Tomb of Sargeras, but this is also, equally as importantly, where we, Azeroth's greatest champions, meet up with Varian, Sylvanas, Jaina, Vol'jin, and the rest of the heroes of the Alliance and the Horde to face the Burning Legion. This is that handoff point from the cinematic where we see Varian and Sylvanas on the shore. This is where we will begin our mission to eradicate the Burning Legion from Azeroth. So with that said, the Broken Shore is the springboard by which we establish the primary plot points for the expansion and get everyone on the same page moving forward. Another thing to note, this time, the Boost experience is its own separate adventure. So what that means, guys, is we can be a lot more consistent with the tuning of the Broken Shore, making things a bit more challenging and hopefully a lot more fun. What about the content structure? So we're trying to tell this humongous story with Legion. And we felt to really do it justice, we needed to kind of up our game. So with that said, the Broken Shore is actually a 40-player scenario split down the middle as two 20-player groups split between the Alliance and the Horde who are working in unison, synchronized as they ascend up the Broken Shore towards the Tomb of Sargeras, where they will face the ultimate evil in the universe and find out what the fate of the world is. So with that said, let's take a quick look here at a demo of the Broken Shore. I do want to say, guys, this is still super, super early. We've got a lot of work left to be done. A lot of iteration needs to still go into this and a bit of our time. But after this is over, Eric Malouf is going to come up and he's going to knock your socks off with some Demon Hunter stuff like Demon Hunter awesomeness. And that'll be that. So BlizzCon, thank you so much. Let's take a look at this video, and here comes Eric after.
Alex? Cool. Hi, BlizzCon. Who wants to play a Demon Hunter? Hi, I'm Eric Malouf, quest designer on World of Warcraft, and I'm here today to talk to you about the brand new Demon Hunter intro. Demon Hunter is our new hero class. It starts at level 98. When you play through the intro, you're going to learn what it truly means to be a demon hunter. These elves have sacrificed everything. They've given up their friends and family. They've taken in immense amounts of fel energy, corrupting their bodies. They've even gouged out their own eyes to gain spectral sight to see their enemies that much better. And they've done this all for one overriding reason: the utter annihilation of the Burning Legion. Thank you. Now, the Demon Hunter intro also serves as our story bridge from the Burning Crusade expansion to the present. We're going to answer the question, what was it that Illidan Stormrage was up to all those years ago at the Black Temple when we were raiding him? So here you see a set of storyboards. Our amazing cinematics team is hard at work on a movie that'll play at the beginning of the intro. In it, you see Illidan Stormrage atop the Black Temple Terrace. He's surveying the scene below. The combined might of the Shatrath army and the champions of Azeroth, yeah, all of you, have arrived to raid the temple. But they've arrived too soon, sooner than he expected. You might say Illidan was not prepared. And so this moves up the timetable for your mission. You're going to invade a demon world, and there's a very specific purpose for it. So Illidan uses his immense fel energies, and he rips open a portal to this demon world called Mardoom. And you and your elite force of demon hunters jump through and begin your assault. Now, what is Mardoom? Well, it used to be a prison world for demons. Eons ago, when the Titan Sargeras was still good, he threw all the demons he came across onto this planet, imprisoning them there with an item that he'd crafted called the Sargerite Keystone. Now, when Sargeras turned evil, he shattered Mardoom into thousands of pieces. It was on one of these fragments that he entrusted the Sargerite Keystone to his most loyal demons. The Keystone is the objective of your mission. Who wants to take a look at Mardoom? Let's roll it. Some pretty epic stuff. So as you saw in that video, the Burning Legion isn't fooling around this time. They brought out their heavy hitters. More powerful versions that we've seen before, but also all new terrifying demons have been joined to the roster. Let's take a look at the brand new Burning Legion lineup. So it's not just, as if that wasn't enough, it's not just demons that the Burning Legion has in its arsenal now. They've added these immense constructs. Now these huge soul-infused buildings each serve a special purpose in the new Legion war machine. This is the side of the Burning Legion we haven't seen before today. So against all that, how are we going to be triumphant? Well, we're demon hunters, so we're going to kill a lot of demons. Let's talk a little bit about some of the gameplay that you're going to experience on Mardoom. For example, you're going to turn the Legion's devices against them. You'll use their immense gateways, power them up, and bring in your own Illidari armies to aid in your assault on Mardoom. You'll also do things like tap into their communication devices, listen in on what their leadership is doing, and turn that against them. For added fun, we've sprinkled Legion crystals around Mardoom. You interact with these devices for a short period of time. The cooldowns on some of your Demon Hunter abilities will be reduced to 0. Now, it's not just the gameplay that's really important on Mardoom. You're also, like the Death Knight hero class before you, going to gradually gain your abilities over time during the intro. However, unlike the Death Knight, the Demon Hunter is going to rip the abilities from the smoking corpses of the more powerful demons that you slay. I want to show you a short clip. It's an ability called I-Beam. In it, you're going to see the Demon Hunter do a backflip, change into demon form, and unleash a torrent of fell energy on the enemies in front of him. Let's take a look. That is literally my favorite Demon Hunter ability so far. Now, no hero class would be complete without its very own epic mount. Illidan Stormrage himself is going to create for you the Fell Saber and give you a short clip of what that looks like in-game. Yes. Okay, I don't want to spoil everything that happens on Mardoom, but suffice to say, we know how this turns out at the Black Temple. When you return to the Black Temple at the end of your mission, you and your demon hunters are taken prisoner by Maev Shadowsong and the champions of Azeroth, and you're imprisoned within the Vault of the Wardens, seemingly for all eternity. We'll get to the second half in a moment. Everything that I've talked to you about so far is playable here this weekend at BlizzCon. So over at the World of Warcraft booth in Hall B. But Mardoom is just the first half of the Demon Hunter intro. Let's talk about the second half briefly. Many years pass while you're imprisoned. Fast forward to the present. As Alex told us earlier, the Burning Legion has invaded and they've come in force. We're losing. The second half of the Demon Hunter intro takes place within the Vault of the Wardens, and when you break out, it's going to be up to you to save the world. Now, this part of the Demon Hunter intro will become available for play soon when we launch the beta. So what comes after the Demon Hunter intro? First thing you're going to do is join up with your faction. You're going to remain Illidari, but when you go to Stormwind or Orgrimmar, you're going to find their leadership in desperate need of your help. Who better to lead the vanguard and take the fight to the Burning Legion than a Demon Hunter? After that, you're going to return to Mardoom, and there you're going to establish your class Order Hall. Now, the Order Hall is a place where all Demon Hunters can congregate with you in charge. And last but not least, you're going to quest for your very own artifact-level Warglaives. I'd like to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today about the Demon Hunter intro. And without further ado, here are Gary and Julian. They're going to take you through the amazing new lands of the Broken Isles. Thank you.
Wow. Hello. My name is Jules. I'm one of the lead game designers on World of Warcraft. With me today is Gary, lead environment artist for WoW. And we're going to take you on a tour of the Broken Isles. And we've got an insane amount of stuff to get through today, so I'm going to dive right into it. So our quest to defeat the Burning Legion is going to see us scouring the continent of the Broken Isles in search of ancient Titan relics known as the Pillars of Creation. Now, the Titans used these relics to shape Azeroth into its first form. And it's only with these relics, the aid of our new Demon Hunter allies, and the powerful artifacts that you'll acquire, that we have any kind of shot at closing down the massive demon portal deep within the Tomb of Sargeras. But before we get to the zones, I want to take a quick look back at some of the history of the Broken Isles. So around 10,000 years ago, at the height of the ancient Night Elven Empire, the lands of the Broken Isles was just a very tiny part of a vast region of Azeroth that was once known as Suramar. Now, with the planet-shattering events of the Sundering, the region of Suramar was utterly devastated. And what remains is just a tiny fraction of the once great Elven Empire that dominated these lands and so much more. Now, the Broken Isles exist today as a scarred and fractured landmass. It's divided into 6 distinct areas: Val'sharar, Stormheim, Azuna, High Mountain, Suramar, and Thaldranath. Alrighty, let's take a look at our first zone, Val'sharar. So look at one of our key concept pieces for the zone. Now, Val'sharar is a beautiful, densely forested druidic paradise, but there's also a darkness creeping into Val'sharar. The Emerald Nightmare is here, and it's begun to consume massive parts of the zone. Here's a look at the in-game map for the zone. You can see it represents a significant portion of the west coast of the Broken Isles. And so Val'sharar has been the hidden and somewhat forgotten heart of Druidism on Azeroth for many generations. It's here that Malfurion first met the demigod Cenarius and was trained as a druid. And it's here that will help Malfurion to track the source of the nightmare as it begins to corrupt so much of this beautiful land. Which leads me to Shaladrasil, a once glorious world tree at the heart of the forest that served as a gateway to the Emerald Dream. Shaladrasil has now become a twisted and tainted, monstrous distortion of its former awesome grandeur. Another important landmark within Val'sharar is the haunted ancient Night Elven fortress of Blackrook Hold. And if you know a little bit about the history of the time period of the War of the Ancients, you'll know that Blackrook played a pivotal role in the first war with the Legion. And coming into Val'sharar, you're going to be meeting up with some of the most revered and ancient Archdruids of Azeroth. Now, the guy on screen you see here is the Archdruid Elethir. He's a Grand Master Treant Druid and one of the 3 key Archdruids that you'll adventure with in Val'sharar. Now, the Nightmare Lord, Xavius, has sent his Satyr legions flooding into Val'sharar. And this is just a glimpse at 2 of the new Satyr types that you'll find within the zone. This is some concept work for the Nightmare Dragons. Now, Nightmare Dragons were all once green dragons, guardians and protectors of the Emerald Dream that are now fully corrupted by the Nightmare. And here's a look at some of their in-game models. But Val'sharar, as a zone, has a very druid-centric theme. And you're going to be running into a lot of native druids that live within Val'sharar. And so we've got all new awesome skins and models for creatures like keepers, dryads, hippogriffs, and of course, these guys. So I know this is going to make some of the druids happy out there. The new Moonkin models are really cool. They're super faithful to the old original you can see on the left there. But they've got a ton of character detail. They're really expressive. But I know there's a druid form that's universal to all druids that's been in need of a little sprucing up, we'll say. So here's a look at your all-new sea lion swim form. So now I'm going to hand you off to Gary, and he's going to take you on a deeper look inside the world of Val'sharah.
Thanks, Jules. My name is Gary, and I'm going to talk to you about the process that we all went through to create the world of Legion. I'm going to show you a lot of concept art, and I even have some video of our latest versions of every zone. So let's continue where Jules left off with Val'sharah. So this is meant to be a druidic paradise. So in order to make this, we wanted to create a true fantasy forest. So every time we start a new zone, we create a concept to try to illustrate that vision. And this was that concept. This piece is our foundation piece. From here, lots of people can do a lot of work from this concept because this gives us our palette, it gives us our shape, and it even gives us our mood. So from here, we can start to build the zone. And we can start to build these druid structures. Because all the structures in Val'sharah are almost indistinguishable from trees, so it was really important that the art team and the design team work really close together to create this druid world. Another pretty substantial part of Val'sharah is this. This is an early concept of Blackrook Hold, carved from the very rock with a small town that lives in its shadow. So like every good story, Val'sharah has a cool twist. And in this case, the twist is the nightmare. So we all had a lot of fun trying to illustrate what the heck the nightmare was going to be, how it was going to look. Was it going to move through the forest like a fire? Was it going to be like a big force field? We knew we wanted it to appear evil. We knew we wanted it to look dangerous. And we knew we wanted it to affect everything it touches. Another big challenge was this, the World Tree Shaladroso. This was a giant tree that we had to see from almost an entire zone away, but still keep that unique feel of the nightmare that we were still trying to work on. So let's take a look at a video of our latest version of this zone.
Alrighty, Stormheim. So this is one of our key inspiration pieces for Stormheim here. Now Stormheim has this rugged, natural beauty to the highlands and the deep ravines, but the land itself is a super dangerous and treacherous land. And it's that treacherous nature of the landscape itself that really closely embodies the spirit of the Vrykul that called this place home. Here's a look at the in-game map for Stormheim. Now, this is on the other side of the continent, and it represents a good portion of the east coast of the Broken Isles. And after an awesome intro scenario that both factions take part in simultaneously, we're going to come into Stormheim and pick up on the story of the Vrykul that left Northrend thousands of years ago, well before the events of Wrath of the Lich King. And they came here in search of their true gods. We're going to compete against the Vrykul God King as he seeks to gain access to the halls of valor. We're going to dig deep into the origins of the Kavaldir and the Valkyr. And we're also going to gain access to Helheim and the halls of valor. Easily two of the best dungeons we have ever done. And Ian's going to take us through those in a bit of detail a little later on. Now, there's a range of new Vrykul to meet throughout Stormheim. We refer to these guys as the Mystic Vrykul. Now, these guys are religious zealots and masters of rune magics. And as I mentioned, we're going to take a deep look at the Valkyr. And there's a number of different Valkyr to meet here. The one you see on screen here is one of the new Ascendant Valkyr models that you're going to meet within the Halls of Valor. Now, this is some concept work for the Vrykul God King, Skovald. And here's a look at his in-game model. Now, you can see Skovald's a brutal warrior king, and he's been juiced up by his newfound Legion allies. And you're going to cross paths with this guy several times. And now, we're also going to introduce you to a fledgling new dragon flight known as the Storm Dragons. And the Storm Dragons make their lairs and their homes within the mountain peaks of both Stormheim and Suramar. And I'm going to hand you back to Gary. We're going to take a look at some of the details of Stormheim.
Cool. Thanks, Jules. So since the Vrykul are the main inhabitants of Stormheim, we wanted the zone to feel edgy and bold and sort of larger than life. After all, this is a stronghold of the Vrykul, so we wanted it to feel big and have that strength of the Vrykul. So we created this concept. So this is another one of our foundation pieces. From this piece, our guys can start to work on the zone. Look at these great fall colors and the big edginess of the cliffs. This is a piece that we can use to start to build the zone. We could even start to explore these different colors with our different pine trees and different yellows and our silhouettes. This piece was our piece that we used to do our environment, so we could see the relationship between our yellow trees and our interesting pines. From here, we could create the established buildings of the Vrykul. So here, these are established structures. These aren't the camps that we've seen with the Vrykul before. This is permanent structures. After all, this is a very sacred land for the Vrykul, full of ancient ruins and lots of mystery. So here's a video of our latest version of this zone.
Okay, Azuna. So this concept piece for Azuna that you're looking at here was actually one of the very first concept pieces that was done for the Broken Isles as a whole. And in this early phase, we're trying to capture the look of the massive ancient devastation that was caused by the Sundering that had such a dramatic effect on the Broken Isles as a whole. But for Azuna specifically, we're trying to capture this element, for the interior at least, that it's a serene island paradise. But the reality is, once you start exploring the ruins of Azuna, it's now a cursed and haunted land. This is a look at the game map for Azuna. Now it's all the way down under in the southwestern point. It's not Australia. And so, much of the devastation of Azuna actually occurred prior to the Sundering. The Elven civilization here was annihilated by Queen Ashara herself in a single colossal display of power. And this is the mystery of the zone of Azuna. why she killed and cursed thousands of her own people.
Jules, wait, before you move on, can you go back one? I'm sorry. Just go.
How rude.
Just one more, really quick. This is fast, but it's worth it. Okay, this screenshot is awesome. You didn't do anything special to get this screenshot, did you? Just like we're in-game, I imagine. So a screenshot like this would have been impossible just months ago. In this expansion, you can see up to 3 times as far than you could before. It's awesome. This adds a whole new level to working on the game. So I'm super sorry, but it's pretty significant. I thought it was a really cool tech thing that really just makes this expansion one of the best we've ever done.
No, it's sorry. An awesome point. Some of the new rendering tech for our far clip and LOD stuff is awesome. Opens up a ton of new macro compositional abilities that we've never had access to before. So it's really good stuff. It's a good point. So in Azuna, we're also going to be meeting up with the small, dying remnants of the blue dragonflight. And Azuna's rich in arcane energies, and the blue flight have found a refuge here among some of the raw ley energies that pull and pocket certain parts of Azuna. Now, Azuna is also home to a large independent landmass known as the Warden's Isle. And the Warden's Isle is also home to the Vault of the Wardens that Eric briefly mentioned as being a part of the Demon Hunter intro experience. And so, as I mentioned, the land and its people to this day still suffer under a terrible curse. And as you explore the vast elven ruins that litter the landscape of Azuna, you're certainly going to run into some of these guys. Now, this is a creature we refer to as the Spectre. And if you've explored elven ruins throughout Azeroth, and particularly Kalimdor, you would have no doubt run into a banshee or two in your time, I'm sure. This is actually the male counterpart to the banshee, sometimes internally referred to as the Manchi, but his real name's Spectre, but everyone just calls him Manchi. Now, in the present timeline, Queen Ashara has sent an elite Naga force here to recover a very important relic. And the concept you see on screen here is for a new Naga brute. Now, these guys and girls are huge, hulking monstrosities, many times larger than the Naga that you may be familiar with. But those same Naga have all received all new models, all new high-res models. New skins, new weapons, new armor, the whole bit. They look awesome in-game. Now, Ashara has also allied herself with a local sea giant kingdom. And the sea giants in Azuna are here in greater numbers, found like nowhere else on Azeroth. And here's a look at just a couple of their in-game models. And you can see the guy in the back left there has like the bulk of a galleon just as a shoulder piece, so it gives you some idea of the scale of these guys. They're pretty damn big. Now, this pretty lady is a creature we refer to as the Wrath of Ashara, and the image doesn't really do her scale without any justice, without any context here, but she is gigantic. She's truly massive. And last but not least, here's some concept work for the Warden Warriors and their Owl Companions. And you're going to find them throughout the Warden's Isle and scattered throughout the Broken Isles in a few small enclaves and holdouts. So now let's take a look at some of the details of Azuna.
Cool. Thanks, Jules. So like all of the zones, Azuna is one of my favorites, just like all of them. So I have to tell you, we went through a lot of iteration when we started working on Azuna. And it wasn't until we came upon a new theme, which was a Greek Isle theme. That's when we created this concept. Again, this is another foundation piece. With this, we had our stylized olive trees and our nice cypress and the blue sky and big white clouds that we could put along the horizon. With a piece like this, we can start to build the zone and start to make iterations on other POIs, like this haunted forest, or we can see below the warm and cool variants for the zone. But the biggest iteration to happen had to be with the ancient Night Elf architecture. Now, we've seen some of these columns and platforms before in the game, but never really more than that. So we really had to expand this kit. So we started to add these wavy Art Nouveau lines and lattice patterns to domes and bigger shapes. We really love this concept. And from here, we created this piece. Now, this is not really a concept. This is a style guide. Lots of people on the team can use this. This gives us a guide for creating anything that the ancient Night Elves would need. If you think about it, we have over 80 artists and over 60 designers. A piece like this is super important to keep everything looking as though one guy did it. All right, so let's take a quick look at a video of the latest version of Azuna. Nice.
Okay, High Mountain. So the High Mountain mountain peak that you see on screen here is easily one of the single largest mountain peaks on all of Azeroth. And the high mountain range that surrounds this massive mountain is full of untamed wilds, deep canyons, fertile valleys. It goes all the way up to icy peaks. Here's a look at the in-game map for High Mountain, and you can see it's kind of central to the continent and all the way in the far north. And the peaks and valleys of the High Mountain range have been the domain of 3 ancient Tauren clans for millennia. And the clans that live here are actually the direct descendants of the Tauren that fought in the War of the Ancients. And united for many years, the 3 clans, Rivermane, Skyhorn, and Blood Totem, have lived in peace for the last several generations, until very recently, when the cave-dwelling Drogbar have risen up and stolen their most sacred artifact. Now, this has fractured the unity of the Tauren clans, and the Drogbar have seized this opportunity to strike at the Tauren in an attempt to claim all the Tauren territories for themselves and rule all of High Mountain. So the Drogbar, they're a cave-dwelling culture that were once enslaved to the great dragon aspect Neltharion. They're a shamanistic race with great elemental control over earth magics. And their strong, brutish appearance can kind of hide their cleverness and their deep attunement to the land. And you're going to meet a wide variety of Drogbar throughout High Mountain. Now, this is a look at one of the Drogbar chieftain. You're going to cross paths with this guy several times, and ultimately I think you're going to come into contact with him in a dungeon in Neltharion's lair. Now, this is another type of Drogbar. Now, these guys are a little bit more diminutive, a little bit smaller than their bigger, burlier brothers and sisters. But they're no less dangerous. These guys in particular are skillful shamanistic warriors. And the High Mountain range is infested with all sorts of territorial creatures, like these brand new alpine harpies here. And the creatures that you find in High Mountain, like these harpies and the Etten, they're going to be significantly larger and more aggressive than the cousins of these types of creatures that you may have found elsewhere on Azeroth. But High Mountain is also rich with wild natural beauty, where all manner of beautiful creatures graze the fields, like these awesome moose here, cousin to the High Mountain Tauren, and they're cute little babies. Or calves, I should say. And here's a look at the High Mountain Tauren themselves. Now, you can obviously see their most distinctive feature are these antler-like horns that they sport. Now, both the males and the females have them. The females are a little bit more petite. They have a range of different horns. And if you take a look at the male here, you can see that his horns, his antlers, are inscribed and decorated. And they do this to define and designate a particular clan affiliation or even the rank within a particular clan. Now let's take a look at some of the awesomeness of High Mountain.
Awesome. Thanks, Jules. All right, let's talk about High Mountain. Absolutely one of my favorite zones. Absolutely. That's the truth. So when we started working on High Mountain, we were greatly influenced by the Swiss Alps and Yosemite, but not just for the zone itself, but for the Tauren as well, because we wanted to advance the Tauren culture, but not too much that it became unrecognizable from their traditional tribal look that we really all love. So we also wanted to do a traditional pine forest, but we didn't want it to be so typical. So we explored some different shapes with their canopy and their unique, silhouettes for their trunk. And we came up with this piece. This piece became our foundation. From here, we could start to build pieces that would go along with the zone. We have our trees, we have our sky. We could even think about how to incorporate other creatures into the zone. Look at these great concepts for the Tauren. This was awesome. Working on this zone, someone said that this working here was like the best harmony they felt between the design team and the art team, much like the harmony between the Tauren themselves, and we thought that was really cool. It was really fun working on this zone. Some zones, just everything comes together, and it did with High Mountain. So let's take a look at a really cool video that showcases our latest version of High Mountain.
Okay, Suramar. So our mission to fight and defeat the Burning Legion will ultimately lead us all here to Suramar. And while the lands of the Suramar zone were hit pretty hard in the Sundering, the capital city of ancient Suramar itself stands not only intact, but remains a thriving elven metropolis. Now here's a look at the in-game map for Suramar. Now it's central to the continent and it connects to all the zones of the Broken Isles. All but one, in fact. And you might notice there's a pretty massive city down there in the southeast. And while the lands of Suramar were hammered by the Sundering, the city itself was protected and saved by a defensive spell cast by the combined might of the city's most powerful mages. And to do this, they harnessed the power of a pure arcane well within the Grand Palace of Suramar. And they were able to create a massive shield dome that protected the city and stayed in place for 10,000 years. And they kept it up for 10,000 years because they believed that the outside world was completely obliterated and what remained out there was just overrun with demons. And so the elves within Suramar City became dependent on the energies of the well and are now completely reliant on it as a source of living energy. And the well itself has now become an abused and corrupted power source that's now known as the Night Well. And the Night Well shrouds the city of Suramar in perpetual darkness. Now, the elves within Suramar City are no longer true night elves. They've evolved into a unique elven species, now known as the Nightborn. And given little choice, the Nightborn leader, Elisande, has now brought down the shield, forged a pact with Gul'dan, and opened the gates of Suramar City to the Legion. Now, the concepts you see on screen here are some early concept work for the Nightborn elves. Now they're regal and highly intelligent and master arcanists able to conjure all manner of weaponry and armor at will. Now, this is just an early sneak peek at some of the Nightborn elves in-game. This is an array of the males. Here's a look at some of the females, and you can see even in their clothing some of the conjured elements of their abilities. Now, within Nightborn society, crimes are punished by exile from the city. And exile's never a good thing for anyone, but for a Nightborn elf, it's particularly terrifying. Cut off from the city and the nourishment of the Nightwell, they suffer this terrible physical withdrawal. And the concept images that you see on screen here are for a faction that exists outside the city, known as Nightfallen. And here's a look at some of the Nightfallen characters that you'll meet in the Suramar zone. And now, if a Nightfallen is unable to acquire any form of arcane sustenance, they regress even further to a state known as withered. And once a Nightfallen becomes withered, there's no going back. They become truly bestial creatures. And you're going to find the ravenous withered lurking all throughout the dark places of Suramar. Alrighty, let's take a look at what we got for Suramar.
All right. So real quick, right away with Suramar, we wanted everything to be unique about this zone, right down to the trees and the plants and the buildings. So we came across this style of doing these sweeping, arcing shapes, just like the Art Nouveau style that you were seeing on the ancient Night Elf buildings. So take a look at these cool colors. You have these magentas, these oranges, yellows, these pale blues. We took all those colors and threw them into these two concepts. These two pieces were our foundation pieces for this zone. Crazy, wonderful colors we have here. This is amazing, and we all loved this look. So with ancient Night Elves, you have to remember that with current Night Elves are druidic. These ancient Night Elves are arcane-based, and all of the magics and all the wonder of their empire is lost in an instant. So, I want to talk about one thing really quick about what Jules said about the size and the scale of Suramar City. This is one of the most ambitious projects that this team has ever done, all right? We're talking about an entirely playable Night Elf metropolis where you can explore every inch of this huge city. So we're all really proud and really happy with what we've done with Suramar, but the zone is still a work in progress. As a matter of fact, if we weren't here at BlizzCon, we'd be at work right now playing Overwatch and working on Suramar. We'd be playing Overwatch, and then we'd be right back to working on Suramar. So we want to show you everything, but it is still a work in progress, so I'm going to show you what we have. So here's the latest version of Suramar. Okay, real quick, you notice there's one more zone we haven't talked about, Thaldornath. Well, we are still working on that zone, and it will be coming soon, much like we did with Tanan Jungle. All right, moving along. This is what you've all been waiting for. So here to tell you everything about Legion, and I mean everything, is our own beloved Ian Hassakostas.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Jules. All right, so that was the world of the Broken Isles. So much to get through. We're going to talk about dungeons and raids. But before we get to dungeons and raids, I want to talk a little bit about the gameplay and the systems of the Broken Isles themselves. So as you went on this amazing tour of the world, you saw all the magical places you'll be visiting, the lands you'll be exploring, but one thing that was notably absent from what Gary and Julian talked about was the order you'll be tackling these zones in, right? Where do you start? Where do you end? Over the years, over the course of a lot of our past expansions, we've taken a few different approaches to how we flow players through the zones. Sometimes we've had a single starting zone, like Jade Forest and Pandaria. Other times we've had choices, like Vashir or Mount Hyjal. Other times, like in Warlords, it's been a faction thing, where Horde started in Frostfire, Alliance started in Shadowmoon. So as we started thinking about and talking about the Broken Isles, we figured, all right, you're going to start out in the city of Dalaran, which is kind of your flying fortress, your base from which you mount your assault on the Legion, and then you'll work your way clockwise around the zone, culminating in Suramar, maybe getting 2.5 levels each step of the way. So you'll probably hit 110, kind of late in High Mountain, maybe Suramar. But while we were doing that, we started building the expansion with this in mind in this direction. While we were doing that, we were, of course, continuing to work on Warlords and to see how some of our Warlord systems were playing out. We were learning a lot more about how to make content in combat that scales. So in our raids, we have flexible raiding from 10 to 30 players. We have time walking that we introduced in patch 6.2, where we allow players to run old content regardless of their current power level. Even the Proving Grounds now actually use a model where the things you're fighting scale up to match your gear level. And so we were looking at how that was playing out and started talking on our end, well, what would it look like if we extended that tech? What would it look like if we extended that approach to the world as a whole rather than just instances? What does that mean potentially for the Broken Isles? Well, what if instead of starting in Azuna and working your way counterclockwise, if you wanted, you could do this? Or what if you wanted to do this? Or what if you wanted to do this? In a world where the zones scale, all of these things are possible. Wouldn't that be cool? So, in the Broken Isles, exactly. It would be cool. That is the answer. In the Broken Isles, there are going to be 4 level-up zones that all scale flexibly. So if you want to start in Azuna, or Stormheim, or Val'Sharah, or High Mountain, you can choose the path you want to take through the Broken Isles. You can explore the world as you choose. You can carve your own path to victory and to the defeat of the Burning Legion. Now, regardless, your objective in each of these zones is to recover, to acquire the Titan relic from that zone known as the Pillar of Creation that is needed to seal up the Tomb of Sargeras, to stop the Legion invasion of our world. And so it doesn't matter which zone you start in, you're going to have to go to all 4. If I were better at art, this slide would actually be like a Mega Man mock-up with the 4 zones in the corners and Gul'dan in the middle instead of Dr. Wily. But that's basically how you can see approaching the expansion, right? You start in one level, move on to the next. Eventually, all roads still do lead to Suramar. Suramar is a fixed level, max level 110 zone. The entire zone exists for players who have already been to the other 4 zones, who have reached the maximum level of 110, and that is where your journey will come to its conclusion, at least for now. One of the great things the flexibility also does is it makes it much easier to play with your friends. It removes the barrier of level to just jumping in and questing in the outdoor world. Let's say the expansion comes out, you've hit up Azuna and Stormheim, you're maybe level 105, 106. Your friend has gone to High Mountain, they're only level 102. You both log on, you'd like to quest together. Today, that's impossible. But in Legion, you could both go to, let's say, Val'Sharah, to which neither of you had previously been, adventure alongside each other, have a great time playing all new content, and it would all just work. So one question you're probably asking, well, how? How does this work? So a couple of key details. First off, we are not scaling you down. We're not nerfing you. As you walk around, your stats aren't going to suddenly be depressed to match the level of the zone that you're in. We're scaling the world around you. This is seamlessly integrated into the UI, into the feel of combat. If it takes you, 12 or 15 seconds as a level 102 player to kill a level 102 boar, it would probably take you the exact same amount of time, give or take, as a level 106 player to kill that boar. So it should all just work. Our goal here is for someone who isn't at BlizzCon, who isn't, following along with the latest news about the game, reading the patch notes, they're just excited to play a new WoW expansion, they should be able to buy the game, hop in and go questing, and not even necessarily know that anything is different. It should just feel like the WoW questing experience you're used to, except with a whole lot more freedom. Now, of course, the itemization in the zones as we do this is going to follow suit. So if you're level 102, you'll be getting appropriate quest rewards for your level. Same if you're 107. Don't worry, the scaling doesn't go all the way to max level, so you're not going to be incentivized to like skip all the quests and come back and do them at max level. Just play the game. It'll be fine. And then, of course, alongside all of this, your artifact is something that is continually growing in power, and that is keeping you ahead of the power curve. So you will be stronger at 108 than you were at 102, thanks to your artifact, which is, of course, the key to success against the Legion. And throughout, in the individual zones, there are still going to be some max-level only creatures to keep you on your toes, the equivalent of the Fel Reaver wandering around, or that really scary demon base that doesn't scale, that you're going to need to wait to come back at max level to tackle. So that is level up in the Broken Isles. Now, what about endgame? What happens once you hit max level? How are you going to be making use of this space? Now, again, over the years, over the course of expansions, we've had a lot of different approaches we've taken to this system, to this problem, to this type of content. So for those of you who played back in Wrath of the Lich King, you're probably very familiar with this fellow. You probably spent quite a number of days doing his bidding. You did that so that you could buy this stuff, and you wouldn't walk around with unenchanted shoulders, and that was kind of important. And then once you were done, once you hit Revered or Exalted, whatever your goal was, you probably didn't go back and do these dailies anymore. Mists of Pandaria. If you did dailies in Mists, Lao Softfoot got stuck in this cage on a pretty regular basis. You might have rescued this exact guy from this exact cage dozens of times. You did it as part of a sprawling network of daily quest content that told in advanced stories. That's what we did in Mists. And more recently in Warlords, of course, you have your command table choice on a daily basis, deciding where you want to go. It's not necessarily a single quest that's given to you, but you get to choose your path, whether you want to go to one place or another, and there are various ways of completing those objectives. So that brings us to Legion. Our core goal for Legion outdoor endgame gameplay is to deliver the best of both worlds, taking the best of Warlords and Mists. We want to keep the player freedom, the ability that we had in Warlords to choose where you wanted to go, to choose how you wanted to complete your objective on a given day. We also wanted to keep that free-form gameplay in certain areas where you could, again, take multiple routes to success, multiple routes to completing your objective, but we wanted to imbue it with that sense of purpose and storytelling that we had in Mists of Pandaria, where there was a clear reason for your actions, there was a clear point to what you were doing, what you were accomplishing, the enemies you were defeating, the allies you were making, the bonds you were forging with those allies. All of these things serve to advance the story once you hit max level, and that's something that's essential for us to do a better job with. Now, while we want freedom and flexibility, we also want some sense of structure so that you have some idea where to begin, where to end, what you probably should be doing. But we want to deliver that sense of structure without the sense of compulsion that sometimes came along with missed dailies, where it could feel like if you missed a single day, you were falling behind, and you felt obligated to log in, even if that's not really what you were looking forward to doing that evening. Finally, one new thing that never could have been a bullet point before today is that because the Broken Isles are flexible, we can make use of the entire continent of the Broken Isles for endgame outdoor gameplay. We don't need to limit you to a little small section of a zone, like the way in Valley of the Four Winds in Pandaria, there was the Hosen Plateau, and that was pretty much the only max level place in that entire zone. The rest of it was largely dead to you, well, except for the farm, once you hit max level. This time around, we can make use of all of it. So bringing all that together, what does that mean? So what we want to do in Legion is have a system of outdoor world quests, constantly ongoing, constantly shuffling, so that every time you log in, your map is littered with various objectives, various types of gameplay, varied reasons, varied rewards, and you can choose what you want to do, which zone you want to go to, how you want to approach tackling the outdoor world. So each one of these icons that you see on the map represents a world quest, an objective that you can just go to. There isn't necessarily a daily quest giver giving it to you, and there's a reward that's plainly visible there. These will be around for some period of time. They will vary wildly from maybe just a few hours for a simple objective like this that gives you artifact power, and you're not really going to miss it if it's gone, to an entire week for something that is rare or more epic in terms of its reward. We want to get away from a strict daily schedule and more an organic sense where you can come and go, and there's always going to be something new and exciting waiting for you when you log in. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So really the hallmark of the system as we see it is variety. We want to overwhelm you with choices. We want to overwhelm you with options. A way of looking at this is actually kind of like the garrison missions that your followers get to do in Warlords, you as a player get to do in Legion. You can log in, see this incredible list of things, decide what rewards you value, what content you want to tackle. And this is a wrapper that really we can use to cover virtually everything we're doing in the outdoor world in Legion. So a lot of these are going to be tied to specific factions, the reputations that you've met as you adventured through the world, whether you're aiding your Nightfallen allies in Suramar, or the High Mountain Tauren, or other factions. It also lets us do types of gameplay like, for example, PvP objectives. Maybe if you're a Horde player, some of these objectives will be Alliance-held towers that you can assault, where you have the quest of killing a few NPCs there. Of course, going there is going to flag you for PvP, so it's up to you if you want to, do that or not. Your call. Similarly, our existing world raid bosses can be actually just wrapped into this system as something that comes along, sticks around for 7 days, and gives you an awesome epic reward to then be replaced by something else as they all cycle through. Professions. Gatherers, if you are a miner, if you're an herbalist, you might have access to unique outdoor objectives that are specific to your gathering skill that let you interact with the world in a way that others can't. And finally, this wrapper gives us a chance to bring back some of that fun minigame gameplay. If you think back to Gnome Obliteration, rolling around crushing thousands of gnomes in Uldum, or Roll Club, basically a lot of things that involve rolling. That was the rolling down the Great Wall in Vale. All of those can be free-form adventures, free-form objectives that you're going to stumble into and experience. So what's the structure for these? How is this actually going to work from a player experience perspective? So, of course, there's this map of objectives, and that map, by the way, we want to have consistent for the entire region, so the entirety of North America would basically have the same objectives. You're not server hopping, trying to find the ones that you want, but you can always play with your friends on other servers because you all have the same goals. Now, what we see here is your class order hall. This is the Paladin class order hall, where on a regular basis, emissaries of the different factions of the Broken Isles will come to visit you to request your assistance, because they are in need of your assistance as one of the great champions of the world. And when you accept their quest, they're asking you to go out and do a few objectives on behalf of their faction. Now, the Valkyria emissary from Stormheim, for example, may ask you to do 5 Valkyria-related objectives, but actually there's probably going to be 10 or even a dozen options. So you can look at the map, pick the types of gameplay, pick the types of rewards that you like the most, and pick those for how you're going to satisfy her request. Now, also, you might notice the quest markers over their heads are not blue, they're gold. That's because these aren't strictly daily quests. These emissaries will come by your order hall, but they'll stick around for a few days. So if you haven't attended to them, eventually they will kind of get bored or frustrated and wander off. But if you haven't logged in a couple of days, you'll have a few more of them waiting for you. You can think of them more the way quests work in a game like Hearthstone or Heroes, where even if you don't log in every day, there's still going to be something there waiting for you next time you log in. It's that freedom without the sense of pressure or obligation. All right, so we're going to talk a lot more about outdoor endgame in the future, but I just wanted to kind of lay out what we're thinking so far, and can't wait to share more of that with you. Now, onward to raids and dungeons. So first, I'm going to walk everybody through some of the actual instances, some of the actual content, and then we have a little systems thing to talk about at the end, but we'll get to that in a minute. So raids first. So we have 2 raid zones that we're going to be launching Legion with, the Emerald Nightmare and the Grand Palace of Suramar. So the first raid zone, accessible a few weeks after launch. I think we're going to go with the same system and the same overall structure we used for Warlords. I thought that pacing worked pretty well. You didn't feel obligated to rush to max level, but the raids were there when you were ready for them. So the first raid is the Emerald Nightmare. This is a 7-boss raid in Val'Sharah. And this is the Emerald Dream. At long last, players get to venture into the Emerald Dream, see what has become of it. Seriously. So the Emerald Dream is, in its origins, it's actually the blueprint for all life on Azeroth in a sense. It's this verdant paradise, this parallel world that mirrors Azeroth, unspoiled, Well, unspoiled for a while, until it fell into Nightmare and was corrupted at the hands of Xavius. And that's where you're going. That's the place into which you are headed. You'll get there by actually climbing the World Tree Shaladrasil in the zone of Val-Shara, crossing over from our reality into the reality of the dream, and doing what you can to root out corruption there. So let's look at some of the enemies that you'll be encountering. So first off, one of the really sad things from an encounter design perspective about Draenor was that, according to the lore, there are no dragons in Draenor. We had to go in a year and a half, an entire expansion, without any dragons to fight. That is a tragedy. So of course, what should we make the very first raid boss of the new expansion? Dragon. So what you see in front of you is the Pestilence Worm. This is the first boss of the Nightmare raid. Once in life, a green dragon curled around the tree, guarding and defending the dream. It was now kind of at ground zero for the corruption and has completely turned from a dragon of life into one of death and decay. So, this is basically just corruption and plague dripping from the bones of this dragon. Really cool encounter. Next, Cenarius. Slight spoilers. So Cenarius, as demigod, mentor of Malfurion, one of the most powerful druidic figures out there, as close as he is to the Nightmare, that makes him equally prone to its corruption and equally vulnerable. So whether he dies or not, that's something we'll have to see, but you will be facing him as a raid boss in the Emerald Nightmare. Finally, Xavius. Now, when he manifests himself in our world, Xavius looks like a satyr. But in the Nightmare, this is his domain. We play by his rules. He takes on any form he chooses, and he is grossly misshapen, grotesque, and he awaits at the deepest, darkest heart of the Nightmare when you make it there. So that's going to be the first raid zone. Second, actually, let's watch a video. So yeah, if you look at that video, you might have noticed a couple of familiar locations. Remember, the dream is a parallel of Azeroth, and so the Nightmare, so too, is it a parallel. Next from there, later on, we'll be moving on to the Palace of Suramar. This is a 10-boss raid that is Gul'dan's base of operations, where the Legion are in league with, as Julian mentioned earlier, the Nightborn of Suramar. This is where what will be the final pillar of creation, the Eye of Aman'Thul, has been used to power and infuse the Nightwell with energy that drives the Nightborn civilization, and we need to go and retrieve it if we want to have any hope of success. Now, though this is Gul'dan's base of operations, this isn't a dark demon raid. This is a majestic elven city. This is the height of elven civilization. And so it's actually a really exciting zone for us to build and a very new type of environment for us to set a raid in. So the way we start as we're building a raid, we start initially with a 2D layout like this that has a rough framework of where the bosses are going to be arrayed, what the rooms are going to look like, what the flow through each floor is going to be. This is a cross-section of the middle floor of the Palace of Suramar. So we take that alongside with some concept art. This was a piece that was originally shown at Gamescom that shows that exact same courtyard. And our dungeon artists begin to sort of execute putting the two together. And one of the great things about the palace is that this is an open, sprawling space with an astronomer's observatory, with botanical gardens, with guest quarters. It's a functional space that once stood as a monument to a civilization at really the heights of Azeroth. But now it's in the hands of a deep corruption and deep darkness. We need to go to root out some of the Legion that are in there, but also the Nightborn that have betrayed their own people. So let's look at some of the enemies. You're going to be fighting a Dreadlord Ambassador. This is one of the most powerful Dreadlords in the Legion, who is on hand to make sure that everything goes according to plan, that Gul'dan doesn't fail the Legion again, and that the uneasy allies they have in the Nightborn do not disappoint them. and the Grand Magistrix of the Nightborne herself, who has basically power over time given to her by the Eye of Ementhul and the Nightwell. She's one of the most powerful mages in existence, and she's going to stand in our way before we can get to Gul'dan, who will be the final boss of this raid. So it's a little bit about our raids. Now let's dive into dungeons. So you've heard me say before that dungeons are at the heart of the Legion expansion in a way that I think dungeons have been at the heart of no other previous expansion. We have 10 dungeons coming for you in Legion. So first off, let's go over a quick look at the level up dungeons that you're going to be experiencing. And then we'll take a closer look at a few of them, and then talk about some other stuff. So level up dungeons. The Eye of Ishara is in Azuna. This is the place where you'll continue and finish up the storyline of that zone. Neltharion's Lair in High Mountain was once the cavern home of the dragon Deathwing before he was Deathwing, when he was Neltharion. It's now hollowed out, and this has become the capital of the Drogbar civilization, and you're going to have to go in there at the conclusion of the zone storyline to retrieve the Pillar of Creation from the Drogbar's hands. Halls of Valor and Darkheart Thicket I'll be talking about more in a second. Violet Hold, of course, Violet Hold is in Dalaran. As Dalaran moves, always going to be some shenanigans, always going to be some things afoot in Violet Hold. Somewhere along the way, it's not available right as you level up, but there'll be something that happens in the city that's going to require you to go in here. Now, something you've noticed as I've talked about these dungeons is we really want to integrate them into the storyline of the zones more than we have recently. They're not just complementing the zone or giving you, a look at a different aspect of the zone's ecology. Instead, many of our zone quest lines directly culminate in dungeon experiences. We want the dungeon to feel meaningful and every bit as part of the zone as the quest you're doing outside. Oh, and of course, since the world as a whole is flexible and nonlinear, the dungeons also can be done in any order as you level up, depending on what zones you choose. So at max level, we have 5 more dungeons that you'll have access to once you hit 110. So in Azuna, you'll be able to return to the Vault of the Wardens, which Eric mentioned earlier as part of the Demon Hunter start experience. Demon Hunters escape from the vault as it comes under attack by the Legion and falls into ruin. You're going to need to go back there at max level to uncover the secrets of why the Legion was attacking in the first place, and what Gul'dan was up to, and why in the world he wanted Illidan's body. Blackrock Hold is a keep overshadowing Suramar. We'll be looking at that in a second, as well as Helheim. And then we have 2 dungeons in the zone of Suramar, actually in the city of Suramar itself. The Noble District is actually an outdoor dungeon set in the city of Suramar, where you're infiltrating the home of one of the most powerful noblemen in Suramar as he plays host to a party for many of the most powerful Nightborn and even the Grand Magistrix herself. This may be a rare opportunity to strike at the Grand Magistrix, and it's not something you can pass up. We're looking to create some gameplay in this dungeon that's very different from anything we've done, actually probably ever, in World of Warcraft. Suramar catacombs beneath the city, and in fact, these catacombs stretch beneath the entire zone. So the zone is riddled with this network of underground tunnels and interconnections, and we're going to need to go down in here to find an entrance to the palace. Even a little bit of a mini attunement, you might say. It's basically the only way, because of course you can't go in the front gate of the palace, it's all sealed up. The reason why you're going in here is to find another way in. Maybe there are hidden secrets. The way the palace is going to work, actually, you will come in from underground and work your way up through the very foundations of the Nightwell, through the basement of the palace, to eventually reach its highest heights. Now let's look at a few dungeons more closely. So, Darkheart Thicket. This is a level-up dungeon in Val'Sharah, and this takes place at the foot of the corrupted world tree, Shaladrasil. You're going to venture in here to the heart of the forest's corruption, and you're going to need to do this as a culmination of the zone's storyline to rescue an ally who's been trapped in the clutches of the nightmare. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So unlike the raid, which actually takes place in the nightmare itself, the dungeon is really at the foot of the world tree, still rooted in our world and our reality, but you're seeing the threat that it poses if it's allowed to seep out fully. So now in Stormheim, we have a couple of dungeons to talk about more closely. So the Halls of Valor, or Level Up Dungeon, this is very heavily inspired by the mythology of Valhalla. And these are the halls, the golden, glowing halls in the skies, where the greatest warriors of the Vrykul go, so that they can spend eternity brawling and feasting and hunting and reveling in their glory. Odin sits on his throne overseeing these lands, and you need to go here, and you're actually going to be brought here by your race against the god king of the Vrykul in service of the Legion, who's also seeking to claim the Aegis of Agrimar. The two of you are going to come to a deadly confrontation in front of Odin as you each seek to prove your worth and prove that you are the one that is worthy of holding the pillar of creation known as the Aegis. Let's look at the Halls of Valor. Yeah, Halls of Valor is one of the best looking dungeons our team has ever made. I can't wait till you guys get your hands on it. So the counterpart to the Halls of Valor. So whereas the greatest warriors of the Vrykul ascend to spend an eternity feasting in the Halls of Valor, the cursed, the fallen Vrykul, they are ferried on the ship of the damned to Helheim, the domain of the fallen Valkyr queen Helya. And you are going to find yourself at a fog-shrouded dock alongside other fallen souls, waiting for the ship of the damned so that you can get on board and retrieve and safeguard some of the most precious of cargo. You'll have to see what it is. But yes, I did say ship, and it does mean that a good chunk of the dungeon takes place on a ship. So in a sense, if you know what the Grimrail Depot is to trains, you might think of this with regard to ships. This speaks for itself. So we've rounded up all the motion sickness prone designers on the team, had them play through the dungeon. Everyone reports it's good, so fingers crossed. One last close look, Blackrock Hold. So as Julie mentioned earlier, Blackrock Hold is an elven fortress towering over Val'sharah. This was carved from basically a mountain of black stone, and it represents a militaristic side of Night Elves that we haven't really seen much before. Atop Blackrock Hold, this was the ancestral home of Lord Kurtalos Ravencrest, who was originally Illidan's mentor. We're going to need to go in there on the trail of Illidan as we seek to unravel and discover the secrets behind what Illidan's up to and what the Legion is up to. So, Blackrock Hold. All right, so 10 awesome dungeons waiting for you in Legion. Let's talk a little bit about the role of dungeons in the endgame. Almost seems like it goes without saying, of course dungeons are endgame. You hit max level, you run heroics, you gear up. obviously, over the years, we've taken different approaches with Valor points, with badges, to keep dungeons relevant and a central part of the expansion throughout, but really, we've made that our focus more than ever before in Legion. So our goals for Legion, as we were setting out to think about the place of dungeons, were that we needed dungeons to remain relevant throughout the entire expansion. And relevance means both in terms of reward, but also the difficulty and the engagement of the experience, so that you're not, as you did maybe in the past for Valor or badges, stomping increasingly easy content for increasingly better rewards. But of course, if you're going to be doing dungeons for the entire expansion, it's important that there be some variation in the experience. And on top of all of that, we want to avoid what we call internally the Mechanar problem, where given the choice, you'll tend to pick the easiest dungeon, the most efficient one, and do that repeatedly for the rewards at the expense of the others, and even if it's not your personal favorite dungeon. So how does this all come together? We had Mythic Dungeons in 6.2. We've had Challenge Mode. What if we were to combine some of those ideas? What if we were to take Challenge Mode and repurpose Challenge Mode as a true open-ended endgame experience for all players to make dungeons relevant from start to finish, so you can do a dungeon that's as hard as you want or need it to be for a reward that is commensurate in power to the challenge you just took on. That is what Legion Challenge Mode will be. So today, to start a challenge mode in Warlords, you walk into a challenge mode, you click on the pedestal at the start, a timer pops up. In Legion, you will begin these challenge dungeons with a challenger's keystone that you will obtain in a means still to be determined, probably through some of the world event quests that we talked about earlier. But this keystone points to a specific Legion dungeon and has a power level associated with it. That power level determines the difficulty of the dungeon you're going to be running, but also the reward that you're going to receive from it. At higher levels, the keystone might also introduce some additional modifiers as a wrinkle to keep you on your toes. Now, there's still a timer in Legion challenge modes. However, instead of gold, silver, and bronze, we're condensing it to a single timer that's actually probably a little bit more lenient than what silver currently is. We don't want this to be about a frenetic, mad dash through the zone. We want it to be about awesome core dungeon gameplay. If you beat that timer, then you upgrade your stone, and you can take on a higher, more powerful difficulty level and better rewards. If you fail, well, then your stone is depleted, but you still get loot for completing a challenge dungeon regardless, and the quality of that loot depends on what you just completed, even if you didn't meet the timer. So again, core philosophies here. We want to scale the dungeon up to suit your skill, your gear, your preferences, not scaling you down the way current challenge mode does in Warlords, because that feels increasingly bad as you get stronger. We want the focus to be on the combat gameplay of dungeons, not just go, 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 go as fast as you can and AoE pull and stun, but rather what makes dungeons the awesome experience they are as part of the MMO genre as a whole. We want unbounded progression. As good as you are, there will always be a challenge waiting for you. There will always be another step on the ladder. And finally, there are new modifiers to master each week as you get further into the system. Now, what does that mean? So let's take a look at what the UI might look like for starting a challenge. So here we see a pretty high-level keystone that's being used to start the Halls of Valor. We see some significant modifiers to the health and damage of the creatures, but then also 2 additional affixes that are going to modify the dungeon. So this keystone has the Raging affix. Raging affix means that when all creatures in the dungeon get below 30% health, they're going to deal double damage until killed. That's going to change your approach a little bit. Suddenly you can't walk in and AoE cleave down every pack of mobs. You need to really focus fire. You really need to single target in a way that you didn't before. And that's just one example of many in terms of how we're going to change up your gameplay. So imagine extra mobs, extra enemies and pulls. Imagine a challenge dungeon where all corpses are going to explode and leave fire on the ground after they die. Or just to keep your healers on your toes, what if everyone is taking constant damage over time while the dungeon's in progress? You think you can handle that? Fortunately, there are awesome rewards waiting for you if you can. This system is going to start at just a small step above heroic dungeons. So don't hear challenge and think, oh, this isn't for me. If you do heroic dungeons, this is for you. There is a point of entry for you here. But no matter how hardcore you are, there is something in this that will break you. It's up to you to find that breaking point. The higher you go, the better the rewards. And the core of the system we want to deliver is a genuine alternate path to complement raiding or even replace it for you entirely if that's what you prefer, if that's the gameplay that you choose in your dungeons. All right, so just to wrap up really quickly, that was just a slice of what we have in store for you this weekend and what we have to talk about Legion. Thank you so much for coming out. I know one question that's probably in everyone's minds is, when do I actually get to see more of this? When do I actually get into beta to play some of this myself? Good thing you ask. So the first thing we do after we get back from BlizzCon, well, probably going to be to sleep. The second thing we do is going to be to start getting our beta servers prepared for a closed beta launch. That's going to be coming in the weeks immediately following BlizzCon. Make sure you're opted in. Can't wait to get people in to experience the world, to experience the game that we're building. So finally, for those in attendance today, and staying tuned for the rest of the weekend, we have a lot more to talk about with Legion. In Hall A later today, we're going to have a cinematics panel focusing on the amazing cinematics that you saw earlier and more. And tomorrow, we have 2 additional panels. We're going to have a game systems deep dive where we talk more about artifacts, class orders, items, professions, and the rest, as well as classes. And then a Q&A after that. If you have any questions after this panel or just that you've been musing on yourself that you want to submit, stop by the Darkmoon Fair booth in Hall A. You can drop off your questions for the Q&A there. Thank you so much for coming out. Enjoy the rest of BlizzCon.